Okay, hello everybody. This is Frank Boylan from Sligo County Council.
Wait.
Okay, hello everybody. This is Frank Boylan from Sligo County Council. We're going to start in a couple of minutes. We're just waiting for a few more people to join in. So we'll be starting in about 60 seconds to 2 minutes. Thank you. Okay, I think we'll start now. So welcome everybody, and thanks for taking the time to join us on this webinar. My name is Frank Moylan, and I'm one of the planners here with Sligo County Council. The purpose of this webinar is to get the public's views on our initial designs for the improvements that we have planned for a number of our key town centre streets, namely Stephen Street, Holborn Street, Rockwood Parade, Water Lane and Tubergall Lane. By way of background, Sligo County Council commissioned the design consultancy Building Design Partnership, or BDP, to prepare a public realm plan for Sligo back in 2018. The aim of the plan was to enhance and improve the appearance of our town centre as a place to live, work, shop, socialise and visit. The plan itself set out a programme of actions that would be implemented over a number of years, which would ultimately transform the heart of Sligo into an attractive and vibrant city centre. The first of such interventions influenced by the public realm plan is the O'Connell Street project, which was completed just last month and will be followed by the development of what has become known as the Cultural Plaza in Stephen Street Car Park, which we plan will go on site in the new year. The project, which is the subject of this webinar, is the enhancement of those streets that link into and connect with both O'Connell Street and the Cultural Plaza. And now, normally at design stage, we would hold public meetings in City Hall to allow people to have their say and input into the process, but for obvious reasons, we've had to go online with this round of public consultations. In terms of the format of this webinar, Muireann Kirk from BDP will give a presentation on the initial designs, and people can use the Q&A tool to ask questions and give their thoughts. At the end of Muireann's presentation, which I believe will be about 15 to 20 minutes, we'll try to respond to some of the main queries raised. So if I can ask Muireann to begin his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. So I'm going to basically talk through the information which has been put on the website, which explains these initial ideas. We've got to say that this is a process which we're going through, which is emerging ideas which have yet to be set in stone, and have got a design process which follows them, taking into account anything that we've been told through a whole series of these webinars and other meetings and other conversations, to ensure that we get the design right and we get the balance of all the different elements together. So as Frank says, we're looking at a certain area within Sligo, but it's worth saying that this is actually part of a larger plan. This is the Sligo Citywide Public Realm Vision, which was produced a couple of years ago, which was a public realm plan, which really looked at understanding the streets and spaces and working out how they're best going to work for the future. And that's trying to take into consideration all elements from businesses to movements to the heritage elements, and trying to future-proof for how the whole world is actually changing. So the vision statement back then was to enhance the image and setting of the historic city the enhancement of its streets and spaces, conservation of its built heritage, encourage people to explore, businesses to flourish, and create a vibrant street scene. And we are very much trying to respond to that in the design of these streets. The design guidelines which were put in place there, if you like, are sort of like key things which we're actually looking to make sure we address. So putting people first, design spaces for people, simplify the streetscape. There's a lot of what we call clutter at the moment of artifacts, whether they're bollards or other things, which we think we can actually design out. Ensure consistency in design and the use of materials, so it's a very much a coherent city centre and a nice place to be, and create something which is memorable and identifiable that you want to be in. So perhaps for protecting the character and heritage, which is very special, and designing spaces to be flexible and suitable for multiple uses, which is a really key thing, especially in these changing times, where we're really looking at how things are going to change and how do we get it right. So we want to resist the over design by putting too much in and getting that balance right, and ensuring that the public realm improvements support the functioning of the city centre, which is why we've been doing lots of these talks. We've been lots of surveys out there to really understand what's actually happening in these streets. So there's lots of other considerations, and those include understanding cycling within the city, looking at parking and the duration and location of that parking, seating opportunities, signage and wayfinding, which the council have embarked on a citywide plan at the moment, understanding shop and cafe forecourts and trying to promote the use of these, and reconnecting with nature for healthier streets. And obviously the Yeats heritage and all the elements that link back to the history of the city need to be considered at every stage as we go forward. So these are the streets which we're actually looking at, as Frank mentioned earlier. So Stephen Street, Holborn Street, Rockwood Parade, Turbergall Lane and Water Lane. So these all knit together very nicely in actually trying to really make a real core to the city centre. So ensuring that the rich culture and history is there, understanding how they function. These are functioning streets as well, and making sure that the connections and how they tie into other projects are very much understood. And likewise with Rockwood Parade and the elements in the south of the river, making sure that we do actually really enhance that setting, make the most of the river setting, linking to the cultural plaza, which is already on track, and ensuring that the lanes are connecting to the other parts of the city centre. So we've produced a couple of visuals, and we thought this was the best thing to do at this stage to really try to show and demonstrate what we can do with these spaces. So Stephen Street, you all know this well, and we've looked at this space, and obviously we've got the Ulster Bank, which is a grand building, and we've got a beautiful street which actually is on the curve and meandering up the road. And at this point where it's taken, could nearly be considered the centre of the city. So we sort of very much wanted to make a real place out of this. And the image which you'll have already seen probably is our sort of artistic impression at this early stage in the design process of what we can do. So it's very much looking to provide wider footpaths for a better pedestrian experience, to remove the bollards and the street clutter, to provide a showcase seating and a step plaza, which we have the space for by removing some of those other elements. And that is working with those levels. Celebrate the heritage, the architecture and the Yeats statue with seating and planting, and really try to make the buildings be a lot more in connection with the space, and bringing in greenery and trees for looking at well-being and biodiversity, and high quality paving and planting and street furniture throughout. So it is changing the balance of this street, and we think with the cultural plaza happening, with the O'Connell Streets and the other work which is actually leading towards this area, we think this really will make a considerable change to both the look and feel and the ease of movement for all users throughout the street. And it's trying to get that balance of making sure the street still functions, there is still parking on this street. The carriageway has been narrowed down. We have to look at how it works, what happens at different scenarios during the day and night, and ensure that crossing points and everything else are in the optimum position. So we're really promoting the way that people move around the city. So the next one is Holborn Street. Again, an existing view, and here it's a slightly different scenario, because really what we're looking at doing is saying that we want to formalize a little bit about how the road's going through there, retaining the parking through along the street, but actually trying to minimize the carriageway width and actually have a better pedestrian experience. And this image here actually shows another idea which we have to actually try to say, how can we get more use out of the space? So in this case, there's been a loading bay during the morning, and then in the lunchtime, evening, it becomes a space which can actually be used by the adjacent business. So providing wider footpaths where possible, removing overhead cable wires, which are very dominant in this street, introducing new paving surfaces, and creating that opportunity for spill out spaces for local businesses. Moving along to Rockwood Parade, the existing view here. So this street is an interesting one. This should be the riverside promenade of Sligo. However, it is dominated. It does have a road through it, even though that road is for access only. So we very much want to change this emphasis. We want to create this into a pedestrian zone with access for only the people who are necessary to be there, which are the things like deliveries and the like, and try to control how that access works so we really get the best out of the space. So this means unifying both sides of the actual street, paving it throughout on a level surface, really making the most of having the view to the river and to the other side of the river towards the cultural plaza, and actually trying to say, well, how do we help the businesses along there? How do we give them a zone that they can be using both directly outside the actual building, but even on the other side? And how do we get activity up, get footfall up, and get the users of the space really working as much as possible? So it's creating that riverside pedestrian promenade with high quality paving and enough space to allow cycling and the actual access elements that are necessary along there for the functioning of the businesses. Focusing on the riverside, activation, feature lighting, seating, highlighting the culture and interpretation where we can, providing conserved existing trees while adding some more where we think it's possible, to actually really be building on getting that balance right within the space, and defining activity space for local businesses with tables and chairs and other elements, which especially in these times, which is becoming very much a necessity. As we move around the corner to Donegal Lane, so again, this existing lane, so this is quite a happening little space. It's two streets, there's a space in the middle. There are a lot of eateries around here, and we really want to try to make this, help this and make it even more. So we're looking at how do we maximize the amount of outdoor available space, leveling off some of those surfaces to actually make it easier to put tables and chairs out, and trying to control when vehicles need to come in here, so therefore the businesses can actually set up and actually use as much of that space as possible. So the view which we've actually developed for this, we've actually looked at, we've indicatively got in here seating areas, but we actually think we can probably get more in here. We've looked at sorting out some of the levels, which are currently very difficult, and actually potentially having some artwork up through the middle of the street, which is actually acting as a drainage for the water to run through. We have in this one included a featured tree and some seating around it, which we actually think would help the density of that, but doesn't preclude the actual use of tables and chairs in and around that area as well. We're trying to really create that intimacy and atmosphere. Things like the lighting, we're keen to actually formalize what is there at the moment in terms of the festoon catenary lighting, and put in a permanent solution which really helps that evening economy, and also during the daytime make it a place which is a great place to actually be. So again, just some of those points. introducing planting and a feature tree, and actually getting the position of that right is going to take a bit of time. We have to work with the businesses to work out where that likely can best be and how that best works. Removing bollards and street clutter to improve the pedestrian experience, introducing high quality paving throughout, opportunities for cultural interpretation, and enhancing that local dining experience with the lighting and defined activity space. We realise there's deliveries into this space as well, so we've had to do some tracking to actually look at how vehicles are going to get in and out. But we're keen to think about how space is flexible and adaptable. At certain times of the days, it can be used for one thing, and at other times of the days, we really want to try to control what's happening in there so we can get the most out of the actual space. So the next steps, are to collate thoughts and emerging ideas, and actually is really we really want to get as many people talking to us as possible. We realise it's a very difficult time, and we would prefer to be standing on the street rather than be doing this virtually. But the times are of what they are, and this is an option which we've looked at to try to see what we can best do. We want to then incorporate those ideas into the vision and to the designs. So we still have a design process to go on. We want to get as many thoughts and ideas and comments back as possible, and then we look to submit a Part 8 report, which has the drawings for all of these streets, and we're aiming for November of this year to actually try to tie into funding streams and other streams moving forward to try to make sure that this project has momentum and it goes somewhere. So in terms of the engagement, we've been doing lots of business questionnaires. We've received quite a few, but we still need a few more to get a fuller picture. We're doing online webinars like this one this evening. We have a website which we encourage you all to go to. All this material is up on the website, and you can have a deeper look at it and leave comments directly there. We're having some stakeholder workshops with different groups in terms of the function of the spaces. We've produced lots of postcards, which hopefully you all have, and we've been putting those in different places. And we took the opportunity last week to be on street to actually just get passerbys. And again, in COVID times, that was a non-advertised, because we literally wanted just to speak to people passing by and get opinions of what people are experiencing as part of the street. So really the project is all about making Sligo a better place. It's improving those public realms, improving linkages. And we realise that for us to enable us to do this, we do have to think about other things such as signage, links to car parks, and everything else that comes with it, which are all being considered as a global plan. And really, we're keen to get your comments on what you think about the streets in question, and I'm happy to talk about how other elements need to happen to enable these things to work well. So just looking at that programme again, Part 8, then we go through technical drawings, and there are other things which are going to be pivotal to this scheme's success. Funding being one, and there are funding streams already in place, but they obviously go through a whole series of different processes. Stakeholder agreements, everyone has to agree that this is actually the best possible design. We have been doing a lot of surveys at the moment, both on street physically, but also with businesses, and we need to continue doing that. And there's all the services and everything underground, which we have to make sure that we're actually getting right, so we're reducing risk and making the best possible project that we can. So it's now question time, and basically we're going to look at the questions that have been coming through, and we realise there's quite a few of them in there. So we will try to answer these. So we can answer. We will be answering some of these just directly to the person who has submitted them, but otherwise we'll actually just discuss them as a panel ourselves. Frank is here. I've got a couple of my colleagues on the side as well, and we will see how we can best do that. Kevin, what is there to start with?
Jackie had a good question there, Maren, was just published. She's asking, first of all, she's blind and she uses a guide dog. She has some comments about the O'Connell Street and what's been done there. But she's basically asking about what sort of features will be in the new scheme. Accommodate her.
Yeah.
You can take that one if you like.
Yeah, sure. So I think yes, this is a really good question, and there is obviously lots of guidance out there, and some of that guidance is, or we feel as designers that some of the best solutions are just a well-designed space, which ultimately is learnt, but at the same time the right tactile paving and the right crossings and the right organisation is actually necessary. So for example, on Stephen Street, we are looking at making sure we have a very much a defined carriageway, a defined road where vehicles are, and a very clear pedestrian area. So therefore, there's no grey areas in between that. When we move on to Rockwood Parade and the lanes, we're actually moving into what is going to be a pedestrian zone. That's the intention, which will obviously have some movements on it, very much like what we're proposing for the cultural plaza. So that is a zone where we would hope that it is a dominant pedestrian environment. Yes, cyclists will be able to move through there, and we would hope by actually making levels all the same and actually organising street furniture and minimising any traffic going through there, that it is actually going to be a very inclusive environment for all users, including blind, guide dogs and everything else.
Marion, just Frank here, can you ask you to make a comment in relation to parking? Is there going to be a loss of parking, or how is parking going to be dealt with?
Okay. What other questions have we got? Sorry, so we're just reading questions as they're coming in, but do feel free to write anything on the Q&A. We see it and then we can answer it.
So Frank was trying to publish Thomas's question about the displacement of parking, Marion.
Okay, I haven't seen that one yet. Published. Displacement of parking. Yes. So parking, obviously, we fully understand it is always, every time we do in any town or city, a big issue is always parking. If people are used to parking in a certain area and you propose to change it, it's something which needs to be really considered. So we fully appreciate this, and what we're very keen at doing is understanding the current use of that parking and how can we better that use of parking. And sometimes it's people parking for long durations that maybe should be parking somewhere else. So how do we get a turnover of spaces? We've done lots of projects in town and cities where we've actually changed the duration and the actual ability and ease of use of that parking to get a better turnover, which has actually helped the businesses directly. Likewise, currently some of the links to the car parks aren't as good, so therefore, as the crow flies, the car parks are actually not very far, and Sligo was actually very well served, but we fully appreciate that getting to them and the perception of getting to them isn't maybe as good as it should be. So the signage strategy is actually trying to undertake and look at that, as will other links. So for example, it was mentioned at another session, for example, the library, which is there, how can that act, and the links through that could be improved to actually mean that becomes more part of the city centre, and then ultimately helps with connections to parking. So the parking question is very much about getting the balance right and understanding what should go in which location, which is why we're looking at we have done business surveys and trying to get all that feedback to actually really work out where is best placed for different elements along the street, but in balance with where can we create spaces on that street for the businesses to have outdoor seating, to actually get more footfall, and to actually make people do that circuit. The cultural plaza is going to be a huge draw, and there is going to be more people walking along that part of Stephen Street, and we want them to feel as comfortable as possible, and actually for those businesses to really flourish with the fact that you've got more footfall and that you've got a space outside it. So really appreciate, and it is a balance, and keen to keep discussing and seeing how we get that balance right.
We've had a question from Sean asking about the servicing strategy for Stephen Street, Tubergale Lane and Rockwood Parade.
So I think what we've been doing is on Stephen Street, I think there's currently 3 different loading bays. We are looking at seeing how we can make that more efficient, looking at the location of where that needs to be, look at how the use of the space is actually better. By narrowing the road, we do have to then consider what happens if a vehicle stops in the road. We need to think about where there's actually adjacent space, which is all part of the process which we're going through. Likewise, on Rockwood Parade and the lanes, there is businesses that have access there. There are deliveries. Currently, we realise those are maybe happening in a rather ad hoc way at different times during the day. We would like to try to see if we can control that more. We appreciate that they do need to get access there, but can that be done, for example, in morning hours? So therefore, lunchtime, afternoon and evening, it can be a proper pedestrian precinct, which people and pedestrians can't fully enjoy. But it does need to be worked out. We're still waiting on some of the business surveys coming back, but we collate all of that information together to ensure we get, again, is this balance between the creation of easy to use space, which still functions for people and businesses.
We've had a comment asking about how will Sligo become more accessible for people with a range of mobility issues?
And I think that's probably one of the best thing this project does, by actually having new footpaths, widened footpaths, better pedestrian crossings, more often, more regular. Will actually, even the pedestrian crossings actually come up to pavement level and the cars go up and over them. It means that you get a more of a seamless movement through the city streets. We've done this on lots of other projects where it's incredible the difference it actually makes when you actually put in more regular crossing points and widened spaces. The actual use and the perception and people's perception of distance has completely changed. So whereas today people would say, well, they think it's a long way to walk from A to B, if we actually change this, actually get in really good footpaths which are level and don't have obstacles in them, we find that when we go out and we look at the after completion scenarios, that people are using the streets a lot more, walking a lot more, and we speak to people who have whether it's mobility or other issues, and we actually talk to them and they think it's great. So it's all about getting the detail right, the levels right, the pavings right, the crossings right, and all those things coming together.
We've had another question asking about O'Connell Street, and would there be a similar time frame of construction? Well,
construction is obviously that's a few steps away. What we do is we look at the scheme, we look at there's a balance between how fast you can do a scheme and how much disruption you take. And if you think the faster you do it, potentially you've got a larger working zone. The slower you do it, it's the opposite. And we like to look at it and get that balance right. We've designed and built lots and lots of schemes. The public realm, we specialise in public realm and city centres. So it's all about getting that balance correct, and even getting the criteria of how and when you can build, and how people move around as well, and businesses function. So yes, difficult to relate it directly to O'Connell Street, but we will certainly be working very hard when we get to that stage to make sure it's delivered in the most undisturbing way as possible.
There's been a question about is there going to be introduced more bike parking?
Definitely, cycling is really important, and cycle parking, we always look strategically at placing that at very strategic points. We like to do it at where cyclists, we understand where cyclists are coming from, and give them that opportunity as they're arriving into the city streets to be able to park. And likewise, we don't want those cycle parks hidden around the side. We want them in good natural surveillance areas, so therefore they feel safe and you want to leave your bike there. We're fully aware of that as well. So we will be locating these as the details go forward to ensure that we are really encouraging a really good use of bikes and cycling in the city. Any more in there? There's an interesting question there I've just seen about the use of greenery and what that could detract in terms of insects and birds and the like. And again, this is a fine balance. There is a big drive to bring greenery into cities, bringing nature into cities. It's better. It's good for the environment. It's good for air quality. The biophilic qualities of having greenery in streets means that people will their perception, they'll enjoy those streets more. But yes, we're obviously very aware that there's certain distances and setbacks that they need to be both against properties and for sightlines and for any movements that are going in there. So it's all a very, very much getting the detail right in species, location and function of that space. But we are very keen to be bringing in more vegetation into the city, because we think it is a future-proofing, looking at how streets should be changing in our contemporary world. Anything else? Can anyone see any questions? Off-street parking, I see there's a question. So off-street parking, we have to retain as private. We will be making sure that the current arrangements, we have to be designing those in, which is again why the business surveys, which we've been doing, are really critical to understand what currently is actually happening there.
Jackie's just come back again, Maren. We might just clear up something. She was asking about flush footpaths. It's probably important to mention that they're not all flush, and there are some.
So we have we always create a curb edge where we have vehicular traffic, where we have a pedestrian zone. Yes, that is flush because it is pedestrian. Where we have any elements such as the ends of those or anything which is potential conflict with vehicles, then we will use the necessary tactile. But what we're trying to do is that balance between sight and mobility and actual use. So we believe in the separation and segregation where there is an actual vehicular route and a pedestrian route, and it's trying to actually make a safe environment where there's not. So the cycling. So currently, we believe you can cycle throughout the city centre, and what we're always aware of is that we want to encourage cycling for start, and also that the space available sort of dictates where people feel right to be cycling, how many pedestrians and everything else, and often that space is dictated by the actual what other things are in that space. So where we're trying to remove some of the clutter, it means that we have more generous open space, which essentially means that cycling becomes easier. So the likes of Rockwood Parade is a very good example where we're not going to be looking to change that you can't cycle. We're trying to say, yes, you can still cycle there, and it'll be in a shared environment there, but it's a pedestrian space which we're planning at current to permit cycling.
We've had a question about unknown services underground.
Yeah, well, we've just undertaken a really quite a comprehensive underground service survey, which is a radar survey to try to pick up the services. So we've literally just getting that back this week. And most of the services, we look at record drawings. There's always going to be some ones that are anonymous, as always. We will be doing everything which we can to minimize the risk. So when we dig a hole in the road, that there's no surprises. But ultimately, that's part of the engineering of high streets, and part of what we're going to have to be doing to try to minimize disruption and to make sure that when we do go on site, that the construction work flows. Any more there?
Might be worth mentioning, Maren, that this is happening again for people who joined late and maybe missed the presentation.
Oh yes. We have another session, which is
2 o'clock tomorrow.
2 o'clock tomorrow, which is on a different link, but it's if you go to the website. So I think Kevin, you put up the website address at the start.
I'll put it in again, so everyone has it.
Put it in again, and really we do like everyone to go there. It's our way of actually we obviously can all of the questions and answers that you've given this evening. We take those as part of that engagement process that you fed those in comments. But please do go onto the website, have another further look at the information up there, and do feedback, continue to feedback. Any comments, even any ideas, because at the end of the day, the people of the city know their city, and this is an opportunity. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity to actually improve the streets for the foreseeable future.
Okay, Maren, I think we'll wrap it up there, will we?
I think we can do, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to thank Maren, Kevin, Alice and Leonora for taking their time out in the evening to help us out with this webinar. And thanks to all the attendees and all those who asked questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks.